Hi, sweet babies. We are on chapter 21, The Accident of Nature. All of us had to go down to the police station, of course, where they took a bunch of pictures of the bruises on my neck, and then they insisted I needed x-rays, and so we had to go over to the hospital and get that done, and then go back to the police station again, which wore my nerves almost as much as being kidnapped. Grim, the second time we go to the cops, he's sitting there in the room with me waiting, and he says, "I can't tell you what it felt like coming out of the basement and seeing that double track of footsteps in the snow. I knew it was him. I just knew it in my heart." He kept insisting Graham go home, which she finally did because we were there at the police station for hours more, me telling all about it over and over until I thought I would faint dead away if just one more person asked me what happened when I woke up in the dark and was stolen from my own bed. Grim, he just kept patting me on the arm and saying, "This is important, Max. Maybe this time they'll lock him up for good." And that's what everyone keeps saying, that this time they got Killer Kane, or they want him in violation of parole, in violation of a restraining order, abduction of a minor, and 2 counts of attempted murder. Me and the heroic biker babe is what the papers took to calling Loretta Lee. The word is she's pretty hurt, bad because he cracked a bone in her neck, but she'll be okay in the long run. Iggy, when I saw him that time in the hospital waiting, he was chewing a hole right through his beard. He was so worried and made me think he wasn't such a bad dude after all. It all goes to show, like Grimm says, that you can't judge a book by its cover. It turns out to be a pretty weird Christmas vacation, as you might imagine, and Graham kept fussing at me and won't let me sleep in the cellar. "I don't care if he is under lock and key," she said. Grimm, he says, please humor the woman. She's worried about to death, and so I keep stay upstairs on the fold-out at night, and Graham keeps checking to see if I'm there, which is a pain, but she can't help herself anyhow. I'm just glad not to be alone in the down under. Freak. Well, the fair Gwen just about threw a fit when she got him home because of him disobeying a direct order and sneaking away to rescue me. But after a while, she calms down. All she does is just look at him and shake her head. "What am I going to do with you?" she asks. "Put me up for adoption," he says. "I want to go live with the Waltons." He means the TV show that keeps repeating, and of course, he's teasing her, but the fair Gwen is not amused. "No more crazy adventures or dangerous quests, young man. You have to be careful," she keeps saying, "extra careful." She means the trouble he has sometimes catching his breath because of the way his insides keep growing faster than his outsides, which hasn't really grown at all. Freak goes into a medical research place every few months now, which she says is a real pain, but not that it actually hurts. "Dr. Spivak says my unique status as a marvel of genetic aberrations makes me an object of intense curiosity," he says in that lofty way of his. "Specialists from around the world are familiar with my case." "What about the secret operation?" I ask him when the fair Gwen can't hear us. "The one where you'll get a new robot body." Freak gets this very cool, scientific look on his face, and he always says the same thing. "The bionic research continues, my friend. The work goes on." I don't know why I keep asking, because it gives me the creeps. You think I could be as cool as Freak about the idea because it's him that's going to get a new bionic body, but just think about it makes me want to jump up and run around. I keep telling Graham that what Freak is in the hospital for is tests, I shouldn't have to go to school because, I keep telling Graham that when Freak is in the hospital for his tests, I shouldn't have to go to school because we're like a team. But she won't buy it. "I know Kevin has been a great help to you," she says, "but you've got a brain of your own, haven't you, dear?" "You're right." The other thing about school that's different after Christmas vacation is how jealous everybody is that we got our pictures in the paper and on the local TV. Mrs. Donnelly in English class calls us the dynamic duo, and she puts a cutout picture from the paper on the bulletin board. Wouldn't you know it, some goon put mustaches on us on the very first day. Freak says he looks cool with a mustache and he can't wait to grow one, and he makes Mrs. Donnelly leave the picture up. Me, I'm just as soon forget about the whole thing. I really hate the idea of having to testify at the trial and tell what really happened, but everyone says I have to if I really want him locked up for the rest of his life, which I do, especially after what he tried to do to poor Loretta, who was only trying to help. "They can't make you if you don't want to," Freak says. "A son doesn't have to testify against his father." Grim thinks it will do me some good, plus he's really worried he'll get off again or fool the jury by quoting from the Bible, I say. "Grim worries too much," Freak says. "Everybody worries too much." The way it finally turns out with Killer Kane, Freak is right, because just before the trial is supposed to start, I've got my fingernails chewed down to the second knuckle. Grim gets his telephone call and makes his fist punch in the air, and he goes, "Yes, yes." What happened is they made a deal and Killer Kane pled guilty, which means he has to serve out the rest of his original sentence plus 10 more years. "He'll be an old man when he gets out," Grim says. "He'll be older than me." That should make me happy, but instead I feel really weird and worried. And Grim, who still thinks he knows everything, says, I just have to get used to the idea. That man is an accident of nature, he says. All you got from him is your looks and your size. You've got your mother's heart, and that's what counts. The weird thing I keep thinking about, what if something happens when I get older and I turn out to be another accident of nature? Grim sees me thinking about that one night just before bed, and he sits on the end of the fold-out and says, things will make a lot more sense when you finish growing up, Maxwell. Now sleep tight and don't let the bugs bite. Grim means well, I know that, but sometimes he says the dumbest things because growing up is what really worries me. Chapter 22. Spring has sprung, Freak says, and so are we. This is the day school gets out, and we're taking the long way home. By now, I've been carrying around my shoulders for almost a year. We call it walking high. And even if we haven't been going on any dangerous quests lately, so the Frerguan won't have to throw a fit, Freak hasn't actually given up on slaying dragons. The world is really the world is really and truly green all over, he says. Do you remember what it used to be like back in the Ice Age when the glaciers covered the earth and the saber-toothed tigers roamed the frozen tundra? No, I say. How can I remember that? I wasn't even born. Don't be a pinhead, he says. Remembering is an invention of the mind. I go, what is that supposed to mean? It means if you want to, you can remember anything, whether it happened or not. Like I can remember what it was like in the Ice Age. I keep trying to invent stuff, the wheel, central heating, indoor plumbing, but the Neanderthals were happy with just a campfire and a fur coat. If you guess that Freak has been reading a book about the Ice Age, you're right. He's been seeing a saber-toothed tiger behind every bush, except that so far all of them have turned out to be stray cats. Or once it was a skunk, it was a good thing I could run fast, or we would have to be soaked in tomato juice, which is the only way to get rid of the stink from skunks. Inventing an electricity would be tough, he says, without copper wire or magnets, but I could handle inventing a compass. All you have to do is rub the needle. That way everyone could head south and get away from the glaciers. First, I say, you need to invent a time machine, so you can go back in time and give all the cavemen a hard time about indoor plumbing. Freak goes, you don't need a time machine if you know how to remember. Which is something I'll always remember, him saying that and me trying to figure it out. Freak's birthday's a couple days after school gets out, and the Frerguan has already made it clear he's not going to get a ride on the space shuttle. 13 is supposed to be an extra special year, he says. The least you can do is get my name on the list. How about the linear accelerator? Just a small one so I could split a few atoms. The Frerguan goes, I suppose this means you're going to be an obnoxious teenager? And the deal is, this is really 2 birthdays for the price of 1, because Freak the Mighty is almost a year old. Talk about a prodigy, Freak says. 1 year old and already he's on the way to the 9th grade. The Frerguan just rolls her eyes and we talk like that. Freak says we can't expect her to understand because you can't really get what it's like to be Freak the Mighty unless you are Freak the Mighty. Anyhow, the party is just a family affair because Freak isn't supposed to get overexcited, which is like saying the moon isn't supposed to go around the earth. Last year I got the ornithopter, he says. This year, why not a helicopter, a real one? Though you can't expect a teenager to play with toys, could you? Why not a jet plane? The Frerguan says. Cool, Freak says, a Learjet. What he's really getting, and I've been sworn to secrecy, is this new computer, the one he's been drooling over, the computer magazines. It comes with a modem, which means it has to stay home if he has to stay home for some reason, he can go to school over the telephone. The idea is I'll be there in the classroom with the matching computer. The only problem is I don't know squid about computers. You'll learn, the Frerguan says. Kevin will teach you. But why would he have to stay home? I ask her. We're out in the kitchen and she and Graham are frosting the cake and Freak is hanging out in the living room acting like he intends to have a party every day for the rest of his life. Maybe he won't have to stay home, the Frerguan says, and she and Graham kind of lock eyes for a second. That secret code that mothers have. This is just in case, Max. I think maybe he's already guessed about the computer, I say. That's why he's jerking your chain about the space shuttle and Learjets. I wouldn't be surprised, said Frerguan. You can't keep anything from Kevin. Freak hardly touches his supper. He says he's saving his appetite for cake. And finally we're all done eating except for Grim, who keeps rubbing his belly and rolling his eyes and telling the Frerguan what a genius she is with fresh peas and new potatoes and salmon. And he'll just have a smidgen more things until finally Graham clears her throat and smiles and Grim has to apologize for being such a pig. The funny thing is that when at last we do bring out the cake, Freak asks me to flame out the candles while he makes the wish, and then he doesn't even touch his piece. He just sort of pushes it around the plate. I figure he's so excited about getting the new computer that he's lost his appetite. Not that he's letting on. He doesn't feel good. He's acting like as wise and smart-mouthed as ever. I should have asked for earplugs, he says when we're done singing happy birthday. You better check the glassware for cracks. Hush up, the Frerguan says, or we'll give you another chorus of the song. When she brings out the computer, he acts so surprised and happy, maybe he really is surprised. Right away, he wants to turn it on and show off what a brain he is. And because it's his birthday, we all just sit there and admire him and go, amazing and fantastic. And Kevin, how do you know how to do that? And so on. He's showing Grim how to play 3D chess. And just watching that makes me dizzy. So after a while, I'll go to the kitchen and help clean up, which is something I'm good at. Maxwell never breaks a dish, Grandma's saying. He's very sure-handed for someone so large. We're almost done putting stuff away and wiping the counter when Grim shouts from the other room. All he says is, Kevin! But we can tell right away that something is wrong. We run in, and Freak is leaning back in his chair, making this wheezing sound, panting real fast, and his eyelids are flickering. He's having a seizure, Grim says. Call an ambulance. The fair Gwen is already on the phone. I run out in the street and start waving my arms and jumping up and down so they'll know where to stop, and I keep running back in the house to check on things. But the fair Gwen says there's nothing we can do except wait. Okay, we've got 3 more chapters, and then you can take your AR test if you would like.